and welcome to the channel. My name is Mel and I'm a knitter and crafter living on the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland. If you are new here, then welcome, and if you are a returning viewer, then welcome back. If you are new, I live on the Orkney Islands, like I said, with my husband John and our 2 cats, several chickens and ducks on a small homestead. So today is all knitting, and I have a few finished objects and a couple of, I think they're new cast-ons since my last episode. We'll have to excuse the fact that my hair is still damp from my shower this morning and that I seem to woke up with my face all puffy on one side this morning, so I must have been laid funny. Never mind, we're going to go ahead anyway whilst the sun is kind of out before it gets dull later. So my first finished object is actually what I am wearing this morning. This has been on the needles for a few years now and it is finally finished. This is my witching hour cardigan, and I will insert some footage where you can see me showing this a little more clearly off to one side here. This is an adapted pattern that I turned into a cardigan with steek and everything in it. It is a deep yoked colourwork cardigan. Originally this pattern is for a swan shawl, but I have turned it into, from a DK weight swan shawl into a fingering weight cardigan. And for the steek, what I have done is made an enclosed ribbed steek, a folded button band. So what I have done is picked up the stitches after I've done my steek, and instead of just knitting a rib, I've knitted it twice as long and folded it over and made a steek sandwich. So I've folded over and then whip stitched it down onto the back of the work to enclose the raw cut edge of the steek. It's not something I've ever done before, but and it means knitting more rib than I would like, but it does make a nice neat finish. It does make a thicker edge, but with this cardigan being so lightweight, it doesn't make it overly bulky because the yarn is quite fine. So the pattern is chewed to pieces by my cat. It is the Witching Hour Swan Shawl, like I said, by Hannah Mann, and this is how it would look normally if it is knit in a DK weight as a swan shawl. But I'm not the biggest fan of the swan shawl fit. It just doesn't work with my lifestyle, a busy lifestyle. I think it would be perfectly fine for sitting knitting in front of the TV, or perhaps working at a desk in an office to keep warm. But for me, when I'm up and about and just doing stuffs, it just isn't very practical. So like I said, I switched to using a fingering weight, and I knit it at a fingering weight gauge, which made the yoke less deep than it would have been as the swan shawl. The yarns that I've used, I don't have with me. One moment. I suspect this episode is going to be one of those ones where editing Mel will be cursing me for the amount of cuts and edits that I have to make, but never mind. So the yarns that I've used one of my own hand-dyed yarns from when I was a yarn dyer. This is a 100% non-superwash Blueface Leicester in the colourway Spellbound. If it will focus, there we go. And it is a lovely, really deep violet purple. Purple violet, really deep violet. This is all that I have left. And I also used an undyed oatmeal Shetland, also non-superwash yarn. This one is a bit thicker. This has been washed before it was caked up. This yarn came on a cone with spinning oil in it, so it was washed to get the spinning oil out first, and it is a little thicker than, quite a bit thicker actually, than the Blueface Leicester. This is definitely a fine fingering weight, more along the lines of a, say, a Holst Super Soft, something like that. I made many changes and back and forth on this cardigan. I cast this on, I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, something like that, and I only knit so much of the yoke, and I had cast it on as an actual sweater, and then I put it to one side to do other things for, I don't even remember why now. And when I picked it back up, I wasn't sure if I wanted to carry on making a sweater or turn it into a cardigan. After lots of figuring out what I would wear it with, I decided to go with the cardigan, especially as it has Shetland in the yoke, which is a little more rustic, and I felt like if it was up around my neck all the time it would be too itchy, whereas with a cardigan I'm more likely to wear it like open at the neckline like this. So I decided cardigan, and I debated just steeking the sweater as it was and just carrying on knitting the yoke, but decided let's just do this properly, and I ripped it all out and started again. So I did so, I knit all the yoke, all great. Then I knit the body till it was nearly at the point of, well, until it was a few inches from the end of where I would like the length to be. And then I started working on the sleeves. And the first sleeve I think I knit 3 or 4 times to get it just how I wanted it, which is not unusual for me with knitting a garment. I like to get the sleeve to fit just right. And then I went back and tried on the sweater and decided the fit was awful. I hated the fit. The swan shawl, I had just kind of followed the pattern, and after the yoke it has you make increases to make the body kind of float outwards, to make it like a swan shawl, to, you know, make it flare a little bit. And I had just done this without even thinking, and it looked awful. It was very baggy on the back. It just fit terrible. So I ripped out all of the body, and the problem was that the increases had been made before separating for sleeves, so I had to faff around with dropping down the stitches and taking out the increases and being able to even out all the stitches and what have you, and reblocking. It was a pain in the backside, but I did do it and I got it done, and it actually worked out okay, and it looks fine. Those increases and the drop down stitches and where I'd adjusted it all kind of evened out in the blocking process, which was great. So I'm very happy with it. It has been blocked around 2 or 3 times at various stages to just check on the fit and the drape and what have you, and it has all worked out in the end anyway. So now it is done, and I'm happy that it's finished and I can forget about it. It's now in my woolens storage, so I can pull it out and wear it whenever I want, and I don't have to think about it anymore. I won't be putting buttons on this. I thought about it. I could have made a sandwiched folded button band kind of with buttonholes in it, but I decided the amount of times that I button up my cardigans is incredibly rare. I hardly ever put buttons on cardigans because I just basically don't use them, so I'm not bothering with that. And otherwise I am very happy, and very happy that it is finished. So that is my finished witching hour cardigan. Okay, I have 2 more finished objects, or finished pairs of objects, and they are socks. I'm not knitting as many socks this year as I did last year. If you are a regular viewer, then you'll know I knit a great deal of socks last year. It was around 25, 26 pairs of socks, something like that, maybe more. It was around that sort of figure. It was a lot. I don't think I'll be knitting quite so many this year, and most of those pairs were for myself. I think I knit my husband one pair maybe at Christmas. The rest were for me. I did a box of socks, but I went a little overboard. So this year I'm knitting a box of socks for my husband, but I also am knitting socks for myself as well, because they are my kind of go-to mindless, relaxing knitting projects. So I did knit a pair of socks for myself. This is using some leftover yarns from my sock yarn stash, and it is just a regular pair of stockinette socks, and I love how they have come out. So this is the second half of a skein that I knit with the beginning of last year, and I did blue toes and heels and cuffs, which I should have brought actually, but never mind. And they look very, very different with the pink as the contrast. It brings out the pinker tones in the socks. The other pair look very, very dull, although it is a kind of light to mid blue that I used for the contrast. So the main body of the sock is knit with a indie dyed yarn by Felt Fusion, and the colourway is heart on your sleeve, and here is her logo, if it will focus. It is shiny card, but there we go. Felt diffusion. And the base is a 60% superwash Exmo Blueface, 20% superwash Corriedale, 10% nylon, and 10% Zwarbles. You know the one I'm trying to say, hopefully. I think we tend to say in the UK Zwarbles, but it isn't, and it's Zwarbles or something. Zwarbles. I think it's my pronunciation is terrible. Ignore me. So yeah. Anyway, this is how much I have left from knitting both pairs of socks, and the contrast is just a Drops Fable in a pink, and it is colourway 102, and they've come out really, really well. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep back the socks that I have knit for myself this year and do a kind of a mini box of socks for myself, or whether to just put them in my drawer. I think I might keep them back. I have many of my new ones that I knit last year that I haven't actually worn yet, so maybe I will just keep these until December. The other pair of socks that I've knit are for my husband's box of socks. These are his February pair. Last month I knit a pair in West Yorkshire Spinners Robin colourway, and I have enough left, I think, to knit myself a pair of colourwork socks with those, so hopefully that won't be too much longer. His socks do not fit on the blockers very well. He has very large feet. Okay, so here is my husband's pair of vanilla socks for February, and as I did with the other pair, and I didn't explain how I knit them, it is my go-to vanilla sock recipe that I do for all of my vanilla socks. So I do a Turkish cast on at the toe, and I knit stockinette till I get to the gusset, and then I do increased stitches. I have a eye of partridge on the bottom of the heel, which you can't see on this, but I will show you on my sock. But I have eye of partridge on the heel turn. On my socks I do stockinette for the heel flap, and on John's I have done slip stitch ribbing, which just about show up. Black is not a good yarn to show on camera. Stockinette on the ankle, and a 2x2 rib with a stretchy bind off at the cuff. For both of our socks, and let me get this right, for my socks I have done 2.25 for the toe magic loop, 2.25 for the body of the sock, and I have done the same for John. And on my socks I did 55 rounds before the gusset. John has 60 rounds before the gusset, and there is 20 increases either side for the gusset for John's socks, and there is 14 increases on either side of the gusset for my socks. I have a shorter ankle on the socks than on mine. I have 40 rounds on my ankle, and John has 60 rounds, but otherwise it's the same 20 rounds of rib for the cuff. I also did 60 stitches around for both mine and my husband's feet. I have broad feet. John has kind of not skinny feet, but he doesn't have broad feet, but just have very chunky deep ankles, so that's why he has such a huge gusset in comparison to my socks. The yarns that I've used for these socks are both Drops Fable. I bought 2 balls of Drops Fable in colourway 913, which I think on Wool Warehouse is called Winter or something like that, and they are shades of greys, and there's a little bit of navy blue in there, but it doesn't really show up very well, and kind of like an icy grey blue as well. I bought 2 balls of the Drops Fable for John's socks, as I didn't know how much yarn it would take to knit the socks. When I knit a pair of socks for myself in Drops Fable as the main colour, I use almost all of 1 ball, and I know John's socks are much larger than mine, and they did use I think around 70 grams in total, something like that. 60 grams, 70 grams, so I definitely needed both balls of yarn, but I think I probably have enough to make a pair of kind of like a scrappy socks with some stripes interspersed in amongst the yarn at some point down the line, but there's no rush for that. These will be kind of when I run out of other sock yarn, which I don't know if will ever happen, then I will make some scrappy socks. The contrast toes are just Drops Fable again in colourway 400, which is just a plain black yarn. So that brings us up to whips, and I think this episode's going to actually be one of my shorter ones for a change, which is nice. It means it doesn't take quite so long to edit, and it also means it doesn't take quite so many hours to upload. So I have 2 works in progress. Actually, I think the other one I should probably do first. I think I had cast this one on. In fact, yes, I know I had cast this one on before my last episode, and I showed it on the podcast. I think I'd even done the entire yoke last time, I think. So this is another garment, and it is flying along. This is the Isbre sweater, or in this case cardigan, and I have done all of the body. I think I had finished the colourwork yoke last time, and I think I was close to splitting for sleeves, though I'm not sure on that. So yes, this is the Isbre cardigan. It is designed by Ellie of Skandia, and it is a fingering weight colourwork garment. It is supposed to be a sweater, but I have added a steek to turn it into a cardigan. I have started this sleeve, and I have knit about 3.5 inches, getting close to 4 inches of the sleeve. And I just did this last night whilst watching TV. And I'm wanting to get through some of my easier to do garments this year at the beginning of the year as quickly as possible. I want to try and plough through some of my stash, and doing some of these ones that are just a little bit complicated at the beginning, but then they're mostly stockinette after that, is a good way of trying to get through them as quickly as I can. I have 2 more garments, I think, that I want to cast on very soon, because they're kind of similar. They're either all of a stockinette. The Ori sweater is one that comes to mind, which is basically all of a stockinette, and there is another one. I think it's another one with a colourwork yoke, where there isn't a huge amount of colourwork, and once it is done, it's all stockinette. That one will be getting cast on relatively soon as well, for the same reason. The yarns that I've used for this are more drops, funnily enough. I do have quite a bit of drops in my stash that I want to get through, and most of them are on basic garments, so hopefully it shouldn't take too long to get through. So this is Drops Flora in the colourway 03. If it will focus. There we go. And Drops Flora is a wool alpaca blend. It is 65% wool, 35% alpaca. And the contrast is, again, Drops Flora in the colourway 04. So light grey, I think is it light grey heather, or maybe it's just light grey, and mid grey. So like I said, the design is called the Isbre by Ellie of Skandia Knits, and it looked very nice as a sweater, and originally I had intended it as so, but I do like a cardigan, and I just thought it would get more use out of it as a cardigan than as a sweater. I have done 1x1 rib for the bottom of the sweater, and for the collar I've done 2x2 rib. I actually don't know why I did 1x1 rib on the bottom of the cardigan, actually, thinking about it now, but I obviously decided to do that the other night. I think it's because my, is it All Gordoness, something like that, cardigan in the same yarn is a 1x1 rib, and I'd been looking at it, so it's probably the reasons why. So I'm knitting this at a 24 stitch gauge, which is pretty standard for a fingering weight garment. In fact, I think it is to gauge to the pattern, and I'm knitting this on a 3mm needle. In fact, I stuck with the 3mm needle for the rib and didn't go down a needle size because I didn't want the bottom of the cardigan to really pull in. It does slightly, but because this has got alpaca in it, when I go to block this, this is going to kind of drop out and be a bit more straight. If I didn't think it was going to do that, then I would have done broken rib, which is one of my favourites for the bottom of garments, but I've just gone with the 1x1 rib for this one. So hopefully next episode this will be finished and I'll be wearing this one instead of the one I'm wearing. And I will be working on some other colourwork yoked garment that hopefully I'll be flying along with. So my last item for this episode is a new cast on, and it is using yarn from a frogged item. So I did speak about frogging out my phobia shawl on my, I think it might have been my Make 9 episode for this year. I had knit the phobia shawl by Nordic Stitches, but it was a triangle shawl and it just didn't fit my preferred way of wearing shawls. So instead of it just languishing in a box in the wardrobe, I decided to rip it out and knit a different shawl in a preferred shape. So far I haven't knit a huge amount. Oh, I don't know, I've knit a reasonable amount, I would say. This looks quite crinkly, even though it is garter, because I didn't soak the yarns after I had ripped them out from the previous project, because it was going to be garter and it wouldn't really show up too badly. Besides, this will be getting blocked and it will even out those stitches quite a bit. So the yarns are two different shades of a kind of a charcoal yarn. One of them is a bit darker than the other. This one is, I think, is called Onyx, and this one is, I can't ever remember if it's pewter or, is it pewter? I think it is pewter. If it's not, I'll put it on the screen. But there is onyx and pewter. These are both from the Border Mill, and they are their alpaca rose base, which is a 50% baby alpaca, 50% rose fibre. So it gets this, it is lovely and soft from the baby alpaca and the rose, because rose is soft, but it also gets a really nice, I don't know which yarn it will show up better in, probably the lighter one. It has a nice heathered look to it, but also it has a lot of shine to it from the rose fibres, like a lot of the plant-based fibres have. Tencel is nice and shiny too. So really happy with these. I bought these at the Scottish Yarn Festival a few years ago. Knit the shawl, rip the shawl, knit another shawl. The shawl pattern that I'm using is one that I have knit before. It is a Helen Stewart pattern and it is called the Winter Wonder Shawl. It is a design which is mostly garter. It is a crescent shawl, mostly garter, and then an eyelet lace border, or almost border, and then just a wee bit more a border at the bottom. Does it have any more? Yes, it does have more garter, and then it has a picot edge. So I'm planning on using the light yarn for all this section, the darker of the two for the lace, and then back to the alpaca, the lighter colour for the bottom of the shawl. I have an alpaca fibre floating around and it is tickling my nose. So yes, that is the Winter Wonder from Helen Stewart, also known as Curious Handmade. And that is all of my knitting items for this episode. I'm knitting this on 4mm. Is it 4mm? I think it's on 4mm, which is also kind of standard diameter of needle that I like to knit fingering weight shawls with. I don't have any acquisitions this episode. I know, unusual. I'm not on a yarn diet. I did yarn diets for a year or two, and I'm not currently looking for yarns or shopping for yarns or anything of that matter. Although I do need some red West Yorkshire spinners at some point to do those robin socks, because it has robins on and I need robins robin red colour for it, but not in any hurry, not in any hurry. As for life stuff, pretty much all the same happening around here, other than working on my van conversion. If you are a regular viewer, you'll know I'm converting a small van into a wee camper for myself. But I have more about that on my other channel, my camper channel, which is Wild Heart Roaming Free, and I'll have all the links down below. But that's kind of all that's been happening around here. I think I'm going over the water very soon to visit Mum, and other than that, I don't think anything new. We have a very as simple a life as possible up here, and that's the way we kind of like it. Nothing happening is usually how we like it. So usually I have very little to talk about at the end of the podcast, because all being well, that's how things are and that's how we like it. I don't have really anything else planned over the next few weeks other than going to visit Mum, other than working on this van. Today I have to glue carpet fabric onto walls and work out where I want a extraction roof fan. No, I know where it's going, but like how to fit it. And it's kind of like that around here. It's constantly thinking, how can I attach this piece of wood? How can I attach this? I got to go and like buy a mattress, that sort of thing. It's constantly thinking like 20 steps ahead on basically carpentry and such like, and that is my life currently at the moment. When I'm relaxing, I'm knitting, and when I'm not relaxing, I'm thinking about the fan. Okay, I'm going to leave this here. So I shall hopefully see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, okay, bye bye.